Hey guys, so I want to take this find listings query that we currently have and display it on our website over here. So I want to create a new route where I can kind of see my listings and I can see the picture URL and display that. So we're going to be doing this in 3 parts. In today's video we're going to be rendering a card like this and just get the query running. And then in tomorrow's video we'll actually get the image showing up because we need to make some changes to our backend for that. And then lastly, I want to add the person who created the listing, and we're going to be using data loader for that, but we'll get into details of that at a later when we get there. So let's go ahead and get started with implementing this part though. So I want to be able to call this find listings. So what we're going to do is similar to how we did with this create listing, where we created a higher order component here using the GraphQL React from a React Apollo. We're going to be doing a similar thing. So I'm going to create a new folder called not view but find listing, and we're going to say index.ts. So now we can follow pretty much the same format as we did over here. If we want to, we can even just copy and replace some of the parts. So I'm going to get rid of this. So here we're going to have find listing query. And now we can get rid of all this stuff here and we can paste in the query. Now for this you can grab and I guess we called it find listings with an S. Well, let's add that in, and also I'm going to rename my file real quick. So find listings. So you can pretty much grab any properties here that you want to show on your card. I'm going to initially just grab these 3, and then I might grab more later if we need them. But we have our amenities, beds, guests, all the different things. So there's other ways you can fetch data and display it if you want to. We're going to come back to what the type is going to be for this. So I'm going to say with find listings. And here we're going to keep the any. Here we want to put the new TypeScript definition for this, so we need to make that. So I'm in my controller right now, and I'm going to say yarn gen types, and then we can come over here to our schema. Oops, not our schema, our schema types. There we go. And now I'm going to say find listing. Oh, you know what? I didn't even name this. So I made the common mistake that I usually do, and I forget to name it. And it didn't even crash this time. That's surprising. So I'm going to call this a query. I'm going to say find listings query. And we're going to generate this again. Now this particular query does not have any variables. So we can actually just, this third parameter here, we're just going to have an empty object for no parameters there. And generated find again. We can come over here. Let's see if it generates find listing. I don't even see it. Oh, you know what? That's what I did wrong. So I made this in a .ts file instead of a .tsx file. So I'm wondering if it's having trouble finding it. It looks like it is, because in our package.json, I specified right here that to look for TSX files, not just .ts. So if you ever have trouble finding it, it's probably why, and you may want to change the query to also get .ts files if you have some that have queries or whatnot in them. Alright, so now we should have our find listings query, and I do see that here, so perfect. So I'm going to say find listings query. Here's going to be the new props. We'll fix those in a second. So find listings query. Now, similar to how the mutation works, we can actually pass custom props in. So in this case though, I'm going to pass the props and I'm going to say return like this, because we might want to do some kind of if statements and whatnot before we return out of this. Because with this, we're not actually going to be returning a function. With this, the props, or what we have here, is there's actually going to be data. And this data thing is the same thing we would do if we were querying from a regular component. So we would want to check if data is a thing. So we have to think about what we want to return to whoever uses this, and really they want a list of listings. So maybe I would call this, so I'm going to rename this now. I'm going to say with find listings and change that type right there. So I'm going to say listings is going to be an array, and now we need to think about what type we want. If we come back over here to the schema types, we can see it actually generated a kind of a funny type name here, but you can see this is the name of the type, and this has exactly what we fetched. So that's really what we want, the type of what we want and what we want to send back. So I'm going to copy that, I'm going to paste it, and we need to go ahead and import that. So we can import that from the schema types, and now that's what I want to return. And now if we don't have any data, that's going to be just an empty array. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say let listings equal to an empty array, and I need to specify its type because TypeScript doesn't know what the type of an empty array is. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. Now I'm using let here, and the reason for that is I may want to reassign listings. So if data is there, and at the end I'm just going to return listings. So if data is a thing, and let's see what it doesn't like. Oh, it says prefer const. Yeah, we're going to change that in a second. So this little error will go away when we actually redefine it. So if we got data and we're not loading, then we're going to say listings is equal to data dot find listings. Now we also want to check if we get data dot find listings, because that can also be undefined. So I'm now doing these 3 checks in here, and so now I don't have to do these individual checks in my React and my React Native app. So now they're just going to use this higher order component, and what they're going to get is an array of listings. Now they might want more information than this, because what's going to happen is the array is going to be empty while it's loading, and then it's going to get more information. Now they might want to know if it's loading or whatnot and show a loading indicator. So you can also pass down, for example, I could say loading, which is a boolean, and we can just pass data.loading. Now data is sometimes undefined, and if it's undefined, so I'm going to do a ternary here. So if data exists, we return data.loading, otherwise it's false. If data is not defined, we know we're not loading, but if it is defined, we just check that prop right there. So this is and you can pass any other prop that you want to. So for example, data has fetch more and any other thing that your component would need. But anyway, here is that component, or the higher order component. We're done here. We're now going to use this in our front end. So I'm going to now export it. Find listings, and we don't have to do index. So now I'm going to say yarn build. And now every time I build this, it seems to break the server and we have to restart it. So I think what I'm going to do is just restart it now. When this crashed, oh, okay, it looks like it's fine right now. I guess when we add files or something, it breaks. So now I want to use this code right here in my front end, and I'm going to just say restart TypeScript server 2 because we just changed our controller and rebuilt it. So I'm going to head over to the web, and the first thing I want to do is add a new route for this. So this is going to be, I don't think it needs to be an auth route because everyone can view them. So I'm going to just say /listings, and this is going to be a component called find listings. So we're going to create a new module. I'm going to create this under the listing. So I'm going to call it find, and I'm going to call this find listings connector. It's going to be a TSX file, and I'm going to render this, and I'm just going to say hello for now. And now we're going to do find listing connector. So that's what's gonna we're gonna render at this path. And now I just need to wrap this component with that higher order component we created, and then we're gonna render this card over here. So I'm gonna copy this, and alright, I guess we can double check and make sure our server, we can come over to the listing page and see if it renders. You can see hello there, so cool. So I'm going to copy this card right here, and I'm going to have a div that wraps everything, and we're going to copy this card. Now I'm going to map over the listings and create a card per each one. I'm going to say down here export const, copy this, paste that, and we're going to use that higher order component. So instead of exporting the class itself, I'm going to call it C, and we're going to use the with find listings and wrap C. So now my props, if I add the right one, so with find listing, we can destructure it. So now I have these listings. And again, we also have a loading prop if you wanted to show a loading indicator. So I could say div ... loading. And again, we're going to conditionally render that. So if we're loading, I want to see ... loading. Otherwise, what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to say listings.map, and here I'm going to say L, and this is where we're going to wrap our whole card here. So we're mapping over, and we have for each listing, we're going to wrap this, make sure your parentheses line up here, and then we'll also close this with the curly brace there, and I'm going to save this. I think I might have a syntax error somewhere. Maybe there. There we go. It doesn't look like it likes hoverable. I think I just have to set it to true like that. There we go. Now, since we're mapping over a card like this, we need to set the key. So the key is a unique ID that only this card will have. So I actually was fetching the ID for the listing, so I can say l.id, and now I'm just going to say, so we're going to start the key with the ID, and I'm going to say this is a card. So we're going to save that, and now right now we're just going to display this this card for each listing. So here we go. So now I want to replace that with some information that we get from the listing. So for example, the title going to be l.name. So now instead of European Street Beat, we should see this stuff, and we see Bobo and like whatever I name these things, and I didn't actually put any names for these, so it's blank. And if you saw when I refreshed for a second there, ... loading showed up because we were loading these. Alright, so this is pretty much where I wanted to get in this video. In the next video, we're going to swap out the image here for our actual image of the listing. So I'll see you guys then.